Hi, and welcome to Storytime Tuesday. Today, the storybook I have for you is Liliana's Right to Vote. Um, I chose this one first off because civil rights is very important, and I chose it secondly because although it's still ways off, October 18th is the deadline to register to vote. So maybe if you're watching this, you're a little bit too young to vote at this point. Uh, but it's something good to keep in mind for when you're older, and it's something good to bug your parents about, is to get out and vote. So, anyways, without further ado, this is Liliana's Right to Vote, written by Jonah Winter, illustrated by Shane W. Evans. Here we go. Inside flap. Liliana's Right to Vote. A very old woman stands at the bottom of a very steep hill. It's voting day. She's an American, and by God, she is going to vote. Liliana is her name. Liliana. It's a long haul up that steep hill. It's a long haul when you've been alive for 100 years. It's a long haul when you've lived the life that Lillian has, and walked so far in her shoes. When Lillian looks up, it's more than blue sky she sees. She sees history. Lillian sees her great great grandparents, Elijah and Sarah. They are standing side by side at an auction block. Sarah is holding their baby, Edmund. They are being sold as slaves in the front of the very same Alabama courthouse where rich white men and no one else are allowed to vote. Lillian starts her slow climb through the sunshine. Though the sun shines brightly, Lillian sees dark times ahead, or sees a dark time from years long past. She sees her great grandpa Edmund, now grown. He is owned by another man, forced to pick cotton from daybreak to nightfall. Right there in this country where it is written that all men are created equal. He sure doesn't have the right to vote. In fact, he doesn't have the right to do much at all until after the Civil War, which will end slavery. At least it will end slavery. As Lillian inches up the hill, past the one neighbor's house, and then the next, she sees her great grandpa Edmund on his way to vote for the first time. Thanks to the law that was passed in 1870, the law is the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which says American citizens, uh, that says that American citizens' right to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Even though the law does not allow women to vote, Great Grandma Ida is there with her husband. Lillian feels their dignity and their pride as they enter that courthouse for the first time. Lillian's great grandparents got to vote. But as Lillian continues on, the hill gets steeper. Uh, but that hill is steep. She sees what happens just 20 years later. Right there in Alabama, there's her grandpa Isaac at the courthouse, being charged a poll tax to vote, a tax he doesn't have the money to pay. So much for that 15th Amendment. So much for Grandpa Isaac's right to vote. Lillian pauses to catch her breath, hearing now the voice of her uncle Levi. He is telling about those tests that he was forced to take when he tried to vote, and about the sneer on the registrar's face when he asked, "How many bubbles are there?" in a bar of soap. Her uncle's lips go tight. Her uncle's lips go tight as he recalls being asked to name all 67 judges in the state of Alabama and being turned away when he failed to answer such questions. As Lillian pushes on, struggling to keep her balance, she sees a brave girl standing next to her mother and father as they try to register to vote. The year is 1920, and the 19th Amendment has just passed, a law allowing women to vote. The girl is Lillian herself, with her mama and papa. They are being chased away by an angry mob. There's Mr. Bentley, the barber, and Mr. Crory, who owns the ice cream shop. She feels the firm grip of her mother's hand as they run through the back streets home. And though today the birds are singing and the people are smiling, Lillian sees the vivid orange and brilliant red, the cross burning on the lawn of her girlhood home, set aflame by the same angry mob, just because her parents want to vote. This is something she will always see. Lillian stops in her tracks, unable to keep going as she stands there. She sees herself trying to register to vote for the very first time. There she sees herself again. She sees a blank piece of paper on which she must write down a section of the U.S. Constitution, word for word, as it is being mumbled by the registrar. A test she could not pass. No one could. Are you going to vote? She asks a young man who passes her on the road. Yes, ma'am, he answers. You better, she says, and she means it. There's a younger Lillian taking a test. It's obviously too hard for anybody to pass. And there's an older Lillian telling a young man to go vote. The Lillian sees the funeral procession for a man named Jimmy Lee Jackson, a 26-year-old shot by a policeman over nothing more than taking part in a peaceful protest. It is March 1965. All he wanted was justice and the right to vote. Looking up to the top of the hill, Lillian wonders how she'll ever make it. It looks so far, and she's so tired. Though her feet and legs ache with 100 years of walking, what fuels her ancient body is seeing those 600 people beginning a peaceful protest march from Selma to Montgomery. People who, though they don't know it yet, will be stopped on a bridge in Selma by policemen with clubs. All they want is justice and the right to vote. At the front is future Congressman John Lewis, whose forehead will always bear a scar from where he was beaten. John Lewis was a congressman up to a few weeks ago where he passed away, which is really cool if you had not already heard that. Not that he passed away, but he was in office for so long and fighting for justice. Um, for this kind of justice. As long as Lillian still has a pulse, she is going to vote. And so she keeps on climbing, keeps on seeing, this time the second march from Selma. This march also ends on the bridge in a prayer led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Reverend whose dreams of justice for African Americans are already famous. Wherever he went, he lifted people up with his words, and his words still lift Lillian, who, seeing the top of the hill, is not about to stop. Footstep by footstep, she keeps on going. Just as the marchers from Selma and Montgomery keep on going through the cold and rain, finally making it all the way to the top, making it all the way to Montgomery on their third march, she sees them all: Martin Luther King, John Lewis, rabbis, priests, and 25,000 others. Lillian is there. She can still hear Reverend King asking how long they would have to wait for justice. She can still feel the power in his voice when he says, "Not long." And as she takes those final steps to the top of the hill, Lillian can still see how Reverend King was right, for she can hear the voice of President Lyndon Johnson on her TV saying to America, "Every American citizen must have an equal right to vote. There is no duty which weighs more heavily on us than the duty we have to ensure that right. Uh, all of us must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice, and we shall overcome." Before Lillian walks through the doors of the building, where you better believe she will vote, she looks up and she sees the same blue sky, brighter than any sky she's ever seen, that she saw on August 6, 1965. That was the day President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, the one law protecting all American citizens' right to vote. In every state and every town, the one law protecting Lillian as a full-fledged citizen of the United States. She enters the building, and Lillian steps into the voting booth. Once again, she sees herself stepping into the voting booth in 1965 for the very first time, and she knows full well she would not be standing here today if it were not for the people who marched and the people who died for her right to vote. Lillian touches her finger to the lever, and because she is a citizen of the United States of America, protected by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Lillian pushes that lever. Lillian votes. Here's the last picture I forgot to show you. Comparison of 1965 and current day Lillian. Probably 2008 Lillian. Forget. I don't know. Sorry. Nice. And that is our story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got the important message of what it is to vote, and how it was a long fought battle by a lot of people. Some key characters mentioned in here, like Martin Luther King and John Lewis. Um, but I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Tuesday. Uh, Peace and God be with you. Bye. Tell your parents to vote.